YouTube, this is Justin, aka Demonic Sweaters, back here with another tutorial. This one is going to be about using a pad controller, which you can see right here, with Ableton. And Ableton is extremely popular music software, DAW software, but it is more than just that. It's actually quite unique in its abilities. And I previously made a tutorial about how to use a pad controller in Linux using Reaper. So I wanted to do a similar tutorial on Ableton. All right, so let's go ahead and start a new project. Let's just go to New Live Set. And just so you know, I'm still using Ableton Live Intro 9 here, but Live 10 should still work, or Live 8, whichever one you're using. But okay, so the first thing we're going to want to use here is if we go to drums, there's a Ableton plugin called Drum Rack. So let's just drag that to our first MIDI channel. And you can see right here that this creates basically this set of pads that if you look at, looks pretty similar to the layout of my MPD-24. Which is nice because this makes things very, very easy. And actually, before we even get into there, though, depending on what type of MIDI controller you're using, if we go into Preferences and we go to MIDI, right here you can see as for control surface, I have MPD-24 as well as my MPK Mini, but that's not hooked up right now. But I have the MPD-24 selected as a control surface, as well as the MIDI ports. I have track and remote set to on. You don't really need sync turned on, but you can if you want. But this way I can control everything from Ableton directly from my MPD-24. So this actually is really great because if you go in here and you look at all these different controllers that Ableton already has, what's really great about this, and there's the 218 right there, the MPD 218, that is the one that they're still currently making, and so if you picked up one of those, it would definitely work. But what's really cool about this is all of these controls, as you'll see once we start doing stuff, are already mapped out to basically work perfectly with Ableton. So it makes things really, really easy to do, and it makes it really fun. So let's go into our sound fonts. Well, you're not going to have this directory. This is a directory that I created by adding a folder right here. If you just click Add Folder, and then you can select wherever your samples are stored. I put everything in sound fonts, even though they're not sound fonts exactly, but I do have sound fonts in this folder, but I just left the title that too. So anyway, I'm going to go into this Exotica Samples folder here, and I'm just going to, if you click these, you can hear that they give you the preview of what the samples sound like. Now, if you remember, I sampled all these back in my last tutorial about sampling and creating or using a pad controller within Linux and Reaper. So that's where all these samples came from. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select them all right here, and I'm going to drag them right down onto the drum rack. And I'm actually going to use the same samples on all the pads. So I have the bottom 4 pads are all, like a set of the 8 samples that I created, and then I have a duplicate of those 8 samples on the next set of pads above. So the reason for doing that is you can actually manipulate these quite a bit to where they sound pretty different. And of course you can do this any way you want, but right now if I just started tapping the controller, you'll notice it's kind of complete chaos going on there because everything's playing at once and nothing cuts anything off, which, you know, is going to make a lot of weird sounds like that if you try to actually play anything. So fortunately, Ableton has something called choke groups that can remedy this. So that's what we're going to do first, is set up our choke groups. Now, in order to do that, we're going to click on this little icon right here, and then once you click on that, it'll open up another set of icons. And you have this one that looks like I/O. You just click that. And now we'll see right here where it says choke. So what we're going to do is you just tap on the pad, or the pad that you want to change the choke on. Right now I'm just tapping on the first one. And then what I'm going to do is set this choke group to 1. And now 2, or the second sample, I'm going to set that one to 1. And basically all of the first 8 samples, I'm setting to number 1. Okay, and now the second set of 8 samples, I'm going to put those on choke group number 2. Okay, so what this is going to do with these choke groups is anytime I play a sample that is in choke group number 1, it's going to cut off the previous sample that played before it that's in the same choke group. But if I play something that's in choke group number 2, while I'm playing something in choke group number 1, you'll hear both at the same time is what I'm trying to say. So like, but if I do any of the choke group number 2 together, they'll only play one at a time. So everything up here, these top 8 pads are all choke group number 2, and the bottom 8 pads are choke group number 1. So hopefully that makes sense and you get the idea. So now what I'm going to do is actually start tweaking some of these samples. So in Ableton, since I told you before, I have my, it already configures the MIDI controller for you, most of the difficult stuff. There's already some parameters set that you can use, like pitch is going to be right here on K7 on the MPD24. So that's going to change my pitch. And then the K8 is going to be volume. Now if we go down to the bottom 2 knobs, if we turn on the filter here in Ableton, the bottom 2 knobs will control the filter. So you have K1 is frequency, and then K2 is resonance. Okay, so in order to make these middle knobs do something, you're going to need to turn on the loop because those control loop functions. So if we go back in here, if we click on classic, and well, loop is already on. Oops. If we change this knob, this actually changes the release time. So if I turn this all the way down, it cuts off as soon as I let off the pad. If I hold it down, it keeps playing. But if I turn it up, the release goes on for longer, as you can hear. And this knob next to it's the attack. So this is a similar concept. All the way down is sharp attack. The higher you go, the longer the attack. Okay, and now the ones directly below it, this is going to be our loop function. So this is some really cool stuff you could do here. If you look at the screen, you see how this knob is shortening the loop. And we can actually, if we shorten this loop all the way down, we can move it along the timeline with this other knob. So we could do cool stuff like this. So this is where it starts to get really fun. Okay, now basically what I do now at this stage is I start listening to the different samples and tweaking them and making them sound cool together, you know, at least to me. So we can start off with sample number 1 here. I want to pitch this one down more. Also, another thing I like to do before I do that is actually put a limiter on the master. Because when you're working with the drum rack, sometimes you'll get some distortion from the filter and stuff like that if you're doing various samples. So it's just nice to have a look-ahead limiter on the master there. So let's go back to the drum rack channel. Let me save this to this set. So I'm going to go to Save Live Set As. And I'm just going to call this pad controller to Ableton. And I already created one, but I'm going to replace the one that I created before. Okay, so now let's get back to making these samples sound interesting. Or interesting together. All right, so once we get some stuff worked out that we were happy with, then you can just you can either use it as is and just basically use this as an instrument. Or you can record your performances and turn them into clips and then arrange those clips in Ableton and create a song this way. Like, I've done a lot of music this way. If you go back, my album, the VHS Chronicles, I'll post a link to it down below, is all stuff made basically with these techniques. And I also uploaded a lot of videos back, I think it was probably around 2015, where I was doing a lot of pad controller performance videos, so you could check those out too. But anyway, so what I'm going to do now is just set up a click track here. Let me play this back, hear how it sounds. All right, I think 120 BPM is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and record a little bit and make some clips. So let's go ahead and do something. Okay, so now I can play that back. Can quantize it. Okay, so I think you're starting to get the idea here. We can also create another pattern here. So if we go down to our next clip section, let's practice a little bit. Okay, so now we have two clips there, and now we can hear how they sound, alternating back and forth between them. So. Okay, so I think that gives you the basic idea. I mean, I only created two clips there, and you can already tell how much potential this has in creating really, really interesting music. Using samples, and layering samples and stuff, it's a lot of fun, especially when you're using the drum rack within Ableton. And then you can, of course, go in and add other tracks here. Like, really, we're only using this one track just so you can see what's going on. That's all we're using right now. So, I mean, you can add more synths, you can add audio, you could do all kinds of stuff, and, just keep practicing with different patterns. No, usually when I'm recording something like this, I tweak the samples for a while until I get something that sounds like pretty musical to me. And then when you're playing with those samples, you can also, change the choke groups and like do different things. So if you want certain samples to ring out together and other ones not to, like there's a lot of combinations of stuff you could do. All right, guys, that's all for this particular tutorial. Now, if you have any specific questions about how to use pad controllers or anything else in Ableton, just let me know. You can post down below in the comments. And hopefully, that was a good intro to how to do this stuff. I did not cover everything, obviously. Oops. There is a lot of stuff that you can do in Ableton, endless, really. If you've never checked out, there's a YouTuber, well, he's a musician too, named Mad Zach. Check out Mad Zach. He does some great Ableton tutorials covering all types of stuff, and he's very, very good at what he does. And I learned a lot from watching his videos. But, if you have anything you want me to go over specifically, feel free to let me know. And thanks for watching, and you can check out more of my videos if you want. Subscribe, click like, please, that helps me. And you can also check out my Patreon page, which is just patreon.com/demonicsweaters. And yeah, thanks for watching.